You wouldn't know it by looking at him. But Captain Jack Harrison was a hero. At 79, Jack's life had been filled with the kind of moments that only come when you dedicate yourself to something greater than yourself, fighting in 3 wars, saving lives on the front lines, and earning the highest honors. Yet, despite his distinguished career, Jack found himself waiting in line at a boarding gate like anyone else. "Sir, your new seat is 36C, the gate agent told him. Barely glancing up from her screen, Jack's grip on his boarding pass tightened, his knuckles turning white. "I'm supposed to be in first class," Jack said, his voice calm, but firm, shaped by decades of military discipline. "There's been a change," she replied flatly, already ushering the next passenger forward. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the years Jack had served, nothing that even hinted at respect for the man who had once held a position of command. Jack stood there for a moment, holding the ticket. He looked down at the small lapel pin on his jacket, nearly hidden beneath his sleeve, the Congressional Medal of Honor. Only a few passengers noticed. The others went about their business, pretending not to see. But Jack wasn't about to make a scene. He'd endured far worse than this. At 79, he still carried himself with dignity, though his joints ached with every step. He slowly made his way down the aisle, past first-class seats, and squeezed into the narrow space of 36C. Beside him, a couple was engaged in an animated conversation about their vacation plans. Oblivious to the silent figure sitting beside them, it took all of 5 minutes for Jack to settle into the seat. The cramped space, the noise, the discomfort, it was all part of life. He had long ago learned to accept discomfort, to put his pride aside. After all, he had served his country in ways most people could never understand. This wasn't the first time he'd been overlooked or ignored. But as the plane began to fill up, something unexpected happened. A tall man in a perfectly tailored suit stepped onto the plane, flanked by 2 flight attendants. His calm, purposeful stride had the effect of quieting the entire cabin. Jack felt a tap on his shoulder. "Captain Harrison?" the man asked, his voice soft but serious. Jack looked up, still keeping his composure. "Yes?" The man leaned down, his voice lower now. "I'm Thomas Caldwell, CEO of Horizon Airlines. There's been a mistake, and I want to personally apologize for the seat reassignment." Jack's heart sank. He nodded slowly. "No harm done." "But it is, sir," Caldwell replied earnestly, lowering himself to one knee so he was eye level with Jack. "You should have never been moved from your assigned seat. You were booked in 1A, a seat that reflects your service, your legacy. Please, allow me to escort you back to the seat you've earned." For a moment, Jack remained quiet, processing the sincerity in Caldwell's voice. Then, slowly, he rose. The cabin was silent. As Jack made his way forward, a few passengers stood. One man gave a slow salute. Another whispered, "That's him, that's Captain Harrison." A young woman pulled out her phone, but she didn't dare speak. The gravity of the moment hung in the air like a weight, unspoken but understood by all. When they reached seat 1A, Jack eased into the plush leather seat, the space finally giving him room to stretch his legs. The flight attendants quickly moved around him, offering a warm blanket and a cup of freshly brewed coffee. "This is an honor, Captain," one whispered, her voice filled with awe. She placed a small American flag pin on his tray, her hands shaking slightly. Before the flight took off, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we depart, I'd like to take a moment to recognize a true American hero on board today, Captain Jack Harrison, recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, and a man who has served this country with unparalleled bravery. Please join me in thanking him for his service." The cabin erupted in applause. But it wasn't just applause. It was a heartfelt recognition, a moment of true respect, for a man who had given everything for his country. Jack closed his eyes. It wasn't the applause that mattered. It was the quiet recognition that spoke louder than any words ever could. The acknowledgement of a life lived with purpose, sacrifice, and honor. The flight was a blur. The memories of his service, the faces of fallen comrades, all came rushing back. But today, at least, he was reminded that some sacrifices don't go unnoticed. And sometimes, The greatest acts of courage come from standing tall in the face of discomfort and knowing that respect, once earned, should never be forgotten.